It seems that reviewers today seem to not like the open world genre very much. They seem to give negative reviews, not negative, just not shining reviews to games that buyers really enjoy. If we go back recently to the Division 2, I have it on my Twitter, it went from number 1 on the sales chart to number 2, then it stayed at number 1 for like 3 weeks straight, maybe. So it never went out of the top 3 at all. That game sold really well. It's selling really well. It's still in the top 10. People love open world games. People love them. We go to Days Gone now. Days Gone has been at number 1 for 3 weeks straight. The Division, guess what? It never got more than an 8 for some of these reviewers. Days Gone, it got 9s by some reviewers, but some of the more prominent ones, like IGN, for example, is where I'm gonna start this. From Lucy O'Brien, she said, Days Gone feels bloated, like a movie that goes on for an hour longer than it needs to or should have. IGN gave it a 6.5. She says that it goes on too long, so I started going to look at some of her other reviews, and lo and behold, she played, and she is the one that reviewed Horizon Zero Dawn. You know what she gave Horizon Zero Dawn? A 9.3. If you're going to be a completionist in Horizon Zero Dawn, you're going to put yourself at about 60 hours total playtime. The story is about 22 hours. Days Gone is about 30. That's not to say that's the completionist in Days Gone. That's just the story. So yes, Days Gone is longer in story than Horizon Zero Dawn, but there are more stuff to do in Horizon Zero Dawn. To say that it feels bloated, even though there are less things to do than Horizon when you gave Horizon a higher rating, it seems kind of oxymoronic, to be honest with you. And I love both of these games. Here's the thing. When you buy an open world game, you know what you're getting. You know that you want a very long game. If you buy an open world game and it only turns out to be 13 or 15 hours and you're like, wow, this is really wasted space. And that if you go on Reddit, a lot of the Reddit users will say these same things. They'll say, this game should have been 14 or 15 hours. These comments get upvoted. I'm just thinking to myself, do you want a linear game? Because that's exactly what a linear game is. Uncharted 4, 14 or 15 hour campaign. The Last of Us, same thing. The replayability in those is that there's collectibles, but the collectibles aren't anything that's gonna make you want to do it unless you're a completionist. If you buy an open world game and it's only 14 hours long, you're not gonna feel like you got your money worth. That's why I feel people who buy these types of games, these reviewers, they don't like open world games because they have to spend so much time in them. You give them a game like Uncharted 4 versus Days Gone, where they just have to play through Uncharted once and that's it. Review done. I'm pretty sure they're going to be more inclined to give that one a higher rating, where if you give them a game like Grand Theft Auto, just to use an example, everyone praised it across the board, but that's not the point. If you give them a game like that and they have to spend 60 hours in a game versus 10, what do you think is going to be more higher rated for them? But if we go to another reviewer now, Jared from Game Critics says, I was ready to love Days Gone, and in some ways I still do. But you gave it a pretty bad score. Okay. It didn't love me back, though. If Sony Ben had cut the length by a third, cleaned up the technical problems, and had more variety in level design, it could have been one of my favorite games of all time. This guy scored it a 4.5 because the level design was lackluster. I'm not even going to get on the technical aspect of the game because the technical flaws aren't going to limit your ability to play the game in such a way that it deserves these types of ratings. And these types of ratings are very flawed. And I'll get on that later. But let's talk about Jared. Number 1 on his list of top 10 games in 2017 was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's the same year that Horizon Zero Dawn was released. Something even more funny, Horizon Zero Dawn isn't even in his top 10 games. The number 1 game on his list was the one that he almost had to universally praise because it was a Nintendo game. Everyone loves the Switch. If you give Breath of the Wild a negative review, you're going to eat shit for it. People's going to question your credibility. But Horizon Zero Dawn isn't even in your top 10. What essentially is the same concept of a game isn't even in your top 10. But Jared specifically said the game should have been cut by 1/3. Do you know how long it takes to beat the story in Breath of the Wild? 48 hours on the story. 178 hours for a completionist. Another person using the length of the game saying it should be cut by 1/3, but their number one game of 2017 was tripled what it would take to beat Days Gone. How can you honestly sit there and give it a 4.5 when you gave the other one the best game of 2017? When you read these reviews from these reviewers, what does it sound like to you almost? It almost sounds like they're tired of this genre, because 9 out of 10 people who buy this game, they know what they're getting. When you buy an open world game, you want this game to be long. The more hours you can put into an open world game, as long as there's content to do, the better. Another area where I feel Days Gone was hit hard is by the protagonist. This is going to go into the SJW territory, so brace yourselves, people. If you don't know, Deacon is the lead character in this game. He's a biker, as you would imagine, from him having a motorcycle. He is the most rugged character that's been in any video game in a long time. Joel probably being the most recent one that I can think of in comparison to him. But Deacon, in a nutshell, is everything that an SJW would be against. His whole persona is this tough guy, tough white dude, tough biker. He's just tough. So there's this guy who wrote a review from Gaming Trend, Brian Lawver. He critiques a negative in the game as an off-putting protagonist. Not many games has their protagonist be off-putting unless something about them bothers you politically or personally. It's almost like when you say that, they're the complete opposite of what you're for. If we're speaking video game wise, in the world, if we're not talking otherworldly creatures, Deacon would probably be on the top of the patriarchy list when it comes to masculinity. So, like I said, if you see him as off-putting, me personally, I see him as a cool badass. He's right up there with Mr. Torg. And Mr. Torg is one of my favorite characters in the Borderlands series that's not a playable character. But keeping to this, there's this person named Callie Plague, however you want to say her name, from GameSpot. I'm sure there's plenty of ways to pronounce her name, but for this specific argument, we're going to call her Plague, because why not? And it's not unironically. But she gave this game a 5 out of 10. Days Gone got a 5 out of 10. Do you know what GameSpot gave Anthem? The same person, Callie, who reviewed Anthem, so it's the same person, she gave Anthem a 6 out of 10. She said Anthem was better than Days Gone. I kid you not. This person thinks Anthem is better. But you want to know why she may have gave Days Gone a 5 out of 10? Well, let's just go look at her Twitter real quick, shall we? Right here on Twitter, she sarcastically asks, "All zombies are white?" You know, when that question is presented, you already have an agenda before you even say anything else. And you know that that opinion and that agenda is not going to be without bias. Here's even further proof from the same person on her Twitter again, where she claims this to be her favorite picture, sarcastically. When if it's you or me that thinks logically, you can see that you're the one implying the sexism there. When I saw the picture, I didn't see no image behind it. Someone was bending over. Our legs are meant to have us bend over to pick stuff up. I'm sorry, but you may be your own worst enemy when it comes to your feminist ideology. So where I'm going with this is that I feel like this person intentionally discredited this game because it doesn't align with her political ideologies. First, because there's only white zombies, that's the problem. Then because there might be sexism that only you imply, no one else does. And yes, there are sexual jokes throughout this game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there aren't any, but flirting with someone doesn't imply sexual harassment, especially when you know that person and it's reciprocated back to you. You're trying to say, hey, these two people in this relationship, this adult relationship, platonic or otherwise, they can't joke around because it doesn't fit your narrative, it doesn't fit your ideology, and because of that, you're going to shun and discredit this game, even if it's great, because of the protagonist. Because on the patriarchy scale, it's a white dude. It's a rugged white guy. And honestly, at the end of the day, it just hurts your credibility. When you find reasons to nitpick a game, it hurts your credibility. Not a lot of these reviewers said the game was boring. Not a lot of them said that it was even bad. They just say it's too long. It's your typical open world game. But with the reviews this game gets, you would think that it would be compared to Fallout 76 on the failure level. I'm going to end this by saying that I don't think that Days Gone is the best game to ever be made, but it is a fun game. It definitely is probably a 8.5 to a 9. And if you want to have my absolute lowest score, I would give it an 8. But when you give it a 5, a 4.5, a 6.5, because you're nitpicking things, you're nitpicking the length of the game, you're nitpicking possible sexism that only you perceive. You're nitpicking because there's only white zombies in Oregon, mind you, where this isn't the South where a lot of black people live. No, this isn't that area. This isn't Oregon. It's just that reviewers are getting tired of open world games, so they don't want you to play them, so they're going to give them bad reviews. When there's a guy, a protagonist that's in the game that they don't like, that's not feeding their diversity meter, they're going to discredit the game that you want to play. When you see politics where there is none, and you see flaws in a game where you have no reasoning for it, then you really should just stop reviewing games unless you're going to do it from an unbiased point of view.